Welcome to Backstage with Becca B with special guest Ben Fankhauser. How have you been during this time?
Oh, I've been great. Yeah, for the most part, I've been great. Yeah, I've been teaching a lot and I've been being creative and I've been cooking and enjoying the downtime and yeah, oddly enough, I've been like coping all right.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds that sounds fun. And what do you cook?
Oh, I cook everything. I cook
Everything?
yeah, I love breakfast. First and foremost. So I cook a lot of like potatoes, like crispy breakfast potatoes, and like eggs and veggies, and I make a mean salad dressing, a balsamic vinaigrette I make like salads and pasta and bread and like all the quarantine cooking I've been doing, like all kinds of things.
Yeah, I just do microwave cooking and that's
That's
about where
something. That's a start
it's a start, but
for
it's like
sure.
the meals are already prepared.
Hmm.
you know?
Yes, yes,
So
I know that life. I do.
yeah, I'm challenged when it comes to that. So this since this is about theater, when did you first figure out that you want to be an actor and be a performer in the theater industry?
Well, I was bitten by the bug at an early age, for sure. My mom put me into a summer day camp, a theater day camp, and I just fell in love with the camaraderie and the idea that it was like teamwork to put this show together, and people were like clapping at us. And I was very young. I mean, I was probably like 10 or so. Um, and I just knew I loved that feeling. And it wasn't until probably like late middle school, early high school that I was like, I think this is like a career that you can have, and I think I want to do that. Mostly because I just didn't have any other interests. I mean, I played sports for a little bit, but ended up like quitting for play rehearsal, and I like took some art classes, but ended up not being able to do it because of play rehearsal. So it just became very clear to me, and it's a weird thing when you grow up with like having that one track mind. A lot of people around me did not have that, and so I didn't it was hard to relate,
Yeah.
and I don't think there's any right or wrong path, of course. Um but yeah, it was kind of like that for me, like a one track mind. I would spend my free times at the library, like getting scores and getting cast albums and just like just submerging myself in the world of Broadway. And this is like before YouTube, of course. So
So
that was my only exactly, that was my only way to get stuff, was the library and playbill.com, and YouTube came out like right at the end of my high school career. So that's when things really, I was like, oh my gosh, there's like a whole world out there beyond Broadway. It's like there's
yeah.
cabaret and there's regional theater and student run stuff. And yeah, so that's sort of my journey, is like I was bit by the bug early, and I always knew I wanted to be involved, and I like knew I wanted to be on Broadway. I knew I was going to be on Broadway. It's like so weird to say that now, but it's like
I love that.
my sixth grade self was like, I'm gonna be on Broadway. I couldn't tell you in what show or like when. Like maybe I'll be 80, but I don't know, and I don't frankly care. I just know it's going to happen for me. Um, and so then so it's one of those things.
When was the first time someone pointed out that you could sing?
That's so funny. Like quite early on, I would like before my voice was changed and I could like really keep
Yeah.
pitch, and not only that, but I think I was like had like nuance and like dynamics at an early age, before I even got into voice lessons. And one of my first roles ever was Joseph in the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat when I was in sixth grade. Yes, 12 years old. And my family really made me feel like I was really something special, which looking back on it is a good thing and a not so good thing, just in terms of like your expectations for yourself as you get into the real world. And it's so funny, like you can be the most talented person in the world, and once you get to New York City where everybody can sing, like everybody, all of a sudden you're like, wait, I thought I was the best in the world. So yeah, my family was really instrumental in building that confidence for me. I mean, they like they continue to talk about my turn as Joseph when I was 12. Like, it's something that's brought up a lot.
When did you decide you went to school for theater, right?
I did, yes.
When did you decide you wanted to go to college for theater? Because like I feel like it takes up so much time in college with rehearsals, with everything
Mhm.
going on, and then like it's also competitive at most schools, the theater program.
Yeah. I think probably when I was around my sophomore year, sort of when you start to think about colleges, like sophomore, junior year is when you start to really get ready and start doing your applications and stuff like that. So probably around then. And, I did some research and I found that you could actually major in this thing that I loved. And I was like, well, duh, that's a no brainer. Um, and then doing some deeper research, I was like, oh, okay, some of these programs are really focused on your acting and some are really focused on your dancing and on your singing, and how am I going to choose, and are they going to accept me? And I think these days it's even more competitive than it was then. And I think these days we see people apply to like 12 schools. And even in my day, I think 12 schools, like there was a rare person who was applying to 12 schools. I applied, I think, to like 6 schools, which was enough, like
A lot.
plenty. It's a lot. I mean, it was a lot. And I went to Chicago and auditioned in Chicago for a few schools, and I drove to Ithaca to audition for a few schools, and Syracuse and Pittsburgh and Boston, and I made the rounds, which is I
Yeah.
think what you do. And I recognize I'm so lucky and fortunate and frankly privileged to have had the opportunity to make those trips to those campuses. Some of these schools are private schools that I was able to like sort of have my pick, so to speak. Of
Yeah.
course, it took them accepting me, but so yeah, that's I knew about sophomore year that I was like, okay, this is a college career path. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna like learn as much as I can, get it as good as I can get, and yeah, that was my journey there.
How do you think that going to college for theater, where you went to Ithaca,
Hmm, hmm.
helped skyrocket your career in theater? Because you got Spring Awakening when you were pretty young.
That's right. That's right.
Sure.
You did your research, Becca. Got it.
I did.
Um, so yeah, great question. Spring Awakening was a funny thing. So when I was looking at colleges, I think this was my junior year, I went to Boston to look at Boston Conservatory and uh, maybe another school, Emerson. No, I think I just looked at Boston Conservatory, and they were having an open call. This is the year 2006, yeah, I think this is 2006. So Spring Awakening had just come onto the boards, and they were looking for future replacements, and they were casting the net wide because they wanted kids, real, genuine kids. They didn't want like a shiny post grad actor like crafted performance. They wanted this raw thing. And so they were having an open call in Boston, and a couple of my friends went, and me and another friend of mine got called back that day. And it was like I didn't even like know what the show was, frankly. And it's a funny story I tell in my cabaret show that I do. I prepared a song because I listened to the CD and I was like, okay, there's this guy named Melchior, and he's like this hunky leading man, and that's obviously me. This is like like 17-year-old me being like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm a leading man for sure. And so I like prepare this song, and I'm just like, I'm gonna be brooding and I'm gonna be like angsty and like yes. And then I go into the room and I get so nervous, man. I can't even tell you. And I just got completely off my breath, and I like ended up singing my song kind of like this, which was like exactly the perfect type for this other character in the show, Ernst, who's like timid, and he's coming to terms with his sexuality but doesn't even realize it, and he's very like anyway. So I ended up getting called back for Ernst in that scenario. And then when the Broadway replacements came around, they asked me to come to New York. I came to New York. I saw the show. I had a few rounds of callbacks, and I think it was down to honestly me and Blake Daniel. There might have been someone else, and Blake Daniel ended up getting the role on Broadway, and I was sent back to go do my senior year of high school. No problem. And then when the tour came around during my freshman year in college, I got invited to come audition for the tour, and I was like, oh, maybe this is it for me. So I remember Ithaca was very strict about missing classes. Like even if you're sick, you cannot miss class. You get knocked a letter grade if you do. So it's like it's very rigorous, and I like that in my training. I'm very much, I guess, competitive in that way. It's like the cream rises. You have to be full on committed, or else don't do it at all. Like, yes, if you miss class, like,
Yeah.
dock 'em. Let's go. Like, you have to be here. Now this opportunity comes up for me, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh shit, do I get knocked down a letter grade and go for this weekend for this final callback? And all my teachers were like, there are no exceptions, and like, just know that if you do this, like, you're going to get a docked letter grade. And there was one teacher, Kathleen Mulligan, who called me into her office and was like, just so you know, I think you need to go to this. And she set me up with her husband's talent agent, and I had a meeting with him, and he sort of walked me through, like, it was my first like big professional audition besides Spring Awakening Broadway. Short story long, I have this weekend of auditions for the tour. I don't end up getting the tour. I'm like, you know what? Fine. Never loved you. I don't need them. So I go on. College is great. I end up getting a job that next year working at a theme park in Ohio, Cedar Point, America's Rock and Roller Coast. And just one of the best summers of my life, just doing 6 shows a day.
Busy.
A young singer dancer, very busy, making money professionally for the first time as a singer.
Yeah.
So, and then I get a call that summer, and it's like, we want you to come in for the replacement on the tour. And I was like, you know what? I actually have a gig right now. I'm actually working at Cedar Point, the theme park. So, can't, unless you guys want to fly me in, I can't do it. And they're like, okay, well, the director really likes you. So, like, can you make a tape? So I was like, sure, I'll make a tape. Anyway, I don't know, like, in what world I felt like so jaded, like, so, like, confident that I was like down an opportunity like this or something. Anyway, so I made a tape, and I ended up getting the job from that tape. And it's, of course, they'd seen me over the years, but all that to say, that process for me with Spring Awakening had been happening even before college, and it was something that came up in the middle of college. And Ithaca was amazing about letting me go and helping me earn credits along the way. And I even graduated on time. So I did a BFA program in 3 years and a tour. So that was very cool. And to the other side of your question, like, Ithaca prepared me for the real world in a bunch of ways. Of course, it gave me like foundational actor training. Like, at the end of the day, that training is invaluable. How to use your body on stage. It's not enough to just stand on the X and sing. Like, that's not going to get you a job. Like, that's not going to help you inhabit a character. Text analysis skills. Yeah, exactly. Like, dance training, all that stuff. So that was super invaluable for me. Not to mention, just managing a workload. Something that really surprised me in the real world was I was ready, once I was done with college, to be like, yay, no more homework or assignments ever again. Cut to now you're a professional actor, and at 5 p.m. on a Wednesday night, they'll send you a 60, 65, 70-page screenplay, and now you have to read it, digest it, analyze it, memorize a 10-page scene, and be able to come in the next day and deliver. And if you see what I mean? Like, so if like cramming for those assignments in college like didn't prepare me for that, I don't know like what would. So that's another thing that college really helped me with, is like, sometimes you get a ton of workload that you feel like you can't manage, but you have to figure out how to. And so yeah, that's sort of what I feel like Ithaca prepared me for. Now, there are some things that I think a BFA training program just can't get you ready for. There is something to experiencing this business firsthand that you cannot teach. And that's something I love about theater in general, is it's passed down, really, when you think about it. You can read textbooks, you can go to class. I mean, going to class is how you get it passed down, but like, you can't read this thing in a textbook. Theater is not a solo sport. You have to be in the trenches. You have to experience it to really get the sense of, like, when people say showbiz is hard, you don't really know what they mean until you've been waiting in the freezing cold for an audition, or you've been brought back for years for a part that you never get, or you get a phone call telling you booked a part only to have it rescinded 2 weeks later because they found the celebrity. So you see what I mean? So yeah, college prepares you, for like showbiz on paper.
Yeah.
Like showbiz in theory. You know what I mean?
Balancing act of everything.
Yeah.
Of how do I do a million things at once? And how do I dance, sing, and act at the same time?
Yeah. Now that we're talking about this, I think the text analysis skills, I think at Ithaca in particular, they have a really huge focus on acting. And that's what drew me to their program. because I felt like I was a great singer. My dancing, I was like, I'm a lost cause anyway, and and like I just need help with my acting. And I think that text analysis skill, that sort of being your own director, developing your point of view, so where you can read a piece and say, okay, I think I know how I want to tell this story. And that's invaluable when you bring that as an actor, when you bring that into a room. That's what I'm looking for. If I'm a director, I want an actor that's going to bring a whole world of creativity. I don't want to have to hold their hand every way. So I think it was very good about training me to be my own actor director. And I think that was pretty solid.
And it probably helped you a lot with Spring Awakening, even in the 2 years that you were there, like in person, because Spring Awakening is such a deep emotional show. Like I mean, it's about young kids, but so you kind of understand it to a point since you're young when you're getting cast, which I love that they cast young people and not like people who are like already out of college who look young. So
Right. Hearing you say that, Spring Awakening, coming in the smack dab of my college education, was also a huge eye opener in showbiz, because I replaced in that show. And when you're a replacement in a show, you get pretty much zero creative say. Unless you're lucky. I mean, it depends from case to case. But look, a first national tour that's been out on the road for 9 months already. The director's not there. It's just the stage manager, and the stage manager is a very capable human being. They have a huge job on their hands. So to expect them to be a master director is really like, you can't really expect that. Really what it's like is like, okay, you enter on this line, you start walking on your right foot, and then you turn your head when you say this word, and then you kind of like do this motion when you say this word. You're replacing someone's performance. So I was spending 2 years in school like learning how to craft my own work. And then I get thrown into the professional wolves, and it's like, I don't care about your work. You're doing the guy before you's work. And it's like, oh, wow. And so then I went back to school, and I had this really bizarro perspective of like, what really matters when you do 8 shows a week is that like you hit your mark. It's like, it's not that you're like feeling it or whatever, the audience. And that's the other thing that was an interesting lesson to learn, is like the audience doesn't know what you're thinking. So like, how do you create that emotion? How do you create that feeling 8 times a week? I mean, the answer is technique, technique, technique. But that was a really interesting thing to learn, of like being groomed in an educational environment where you have all the creative say over your work, and then being in a professional environment where you're a cog in the wheel, and that was a really sort of eye-opening thing. But ultimately I feel lucky to have learned that lesson, and then got to go back to school for a year to then find a balance for myself that works, and with that professional experience in my back pocket, thinking like, forming my work in my senior year for sure.
But I'm sure people who saw the tour and saw Broadway can point out like differences in how you brought like yourself to the character on the tour.
Becca, that's exactly right. And something that I learned along the way, during and after this journey, is that the amazing thing about being an actor, and the reason I love being an actor and I want to be an actor more so even than a director or another type of creative, the thing about being an actor is that people don't come to see the character. They come to see the character through the eyes of the actor. And that's why it's different every time, to your point. It's like you can see, that's why it's so exciting to see understudies, because again, you're seeing these roles through the eyes of someone. And that's why it's important as an actor to develop a worldview, to develop taste, to develop, all the things that will make your view through the character's eyes something unique and special. And that's exactly right. So of course I ended up bringing myself to the role, even though I'm saying I felt like a cog in the wheel for sure. No one's going to play that role like me. I'm not going to be able to play it exactly like anyone else. And that's the beauty of being an actor, is like, yes, we have these characters that are written so beautifully, but the complete picture, the cherry on top, is viewing that character through the eyes of somebody. And that's the magic of being an actor. And that's what I love about it.
That's what makes live theater so special, and what makes people want to go back over and over again.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, you did get to create a role from the ground up with
Yes,
Newsies.
I did. Yes,
So, and you were there from the beginning. Were you aware that it was going to eventually go to Broadway? Did you have that in your mind?
No, and the reason is because when I first got the job at Paper Mold, they were like, "This is not going to Broadway. Do not think this is going to Broadway. Like, this is not
Whoa.
anything beyond a regional theater production." And I think the truth is they did not see it going to Broadway. They really were looking to license it. There was this huge hole in Disney's licensing market. Companies all over the country were doing the show illegally, basically just taking dictation from the movie and making their own version because it was such a beloved property. People loved the show. And so people were finding a way to do it because Disney hadn't created a licensable version. So I think this was in 2011, them stepping up and saying, okay, we're going to make a real stage version. And I think if it was successful, the plan was to take it on tour. And I remember that because the set was like built to tour. And I was like, maybe I'll go on tour again. That'll be great. If they'll have me back or something like that. So it was all, every step of Newsies was a surprise. Like, as much as all the videos like show it, that was our surprise. And what a joyous experience that was, of just feeling like I'm here for this moment and I don't know what lies beyond it. So I really need to just enjoy this moment. And I look back so fondly on that because I've done a few other shows that have been like, ooh, are we going to go to Broadway? And it's just so stressful. It's really stressful when you're trying to mount a show in previews and you're like, how do I want to make this as good as I can so we can go to Broadway? And that's such, when you're focusing under that framework, when you're viewing it under that lens, it's a little sort of product based over process based. And as we know, process based work is always going to be more interesting and more enjoyable. And so we didn't know Newsies was going to be what it was. When we opened at Paper Mill, we were playing to sold out houses, screaming audiences. Like, it was like, oh shit, people really like this. And for me, I mean, I had just a bizarre intro into this industry because I was in a show like Spring Awakening where there was also sold out audiences and screaming things. So now I'm doing Newsies and I'm like, oh, I guess this is
The industry.
what it is. You just like, you do a show and it's a hit and people scream at you, and like, that's cool. And so that's been really interesting to reckon with, like, into my late 20s and early 30s, doing other projects that don't carry that same vibe and going like, oh, that was an interesting way to be spoiled in the early parts of my career. That's just an interesting, and time is unfolding as we know it. So it'll be interesting to see what that's like for me. But yeah, great audiences at Paper Mill. And then before we knew it, we were going to do a spot on the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. And then as we were leading up to do that, they announced the show was going to Broadway and I got a job offer. And it was kind of like a snowball. Like, it was like it really just happened within a year. That is so unheard of. Shows don't just like mount out of town and then come in the next, like it's 3 months later. It just doesn't really work like that. So it was just a rare experience and a true joy. And the company was full of young people like me that were making their Broadway debuts. And it's so special to make your Broadway debut, to like be in this community. And everyone that's older that has already made their Broadway debut recognizes that, and they do everything they can to make it special for the next generation. And it's such a beautiful community that way. And so the experience was nothing but like literally rainbows and sunshine. It was so great.
And people still get to watch it because it's on Disney Plus, so people get to watch it all the time, the film version, which
Right.
it still becomes more and more popular every day. And I'm
That's
sure you
right.
get more and more fans from the exposure on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
But so do you remember the day you made your Broadway debut with Newsies? Because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of people obviously made their Broadway debut that day too, so it's probably a
Yeah.
party.
It was a huge party. I mean, I think there was like probably like 20 of us. I mean, it was so unheard of to have a company with so many Broadway debuts. So many. So it was really special. And I remember, I probably will never forget it actually. Um, it was the night of our dress rehearsal. And it's traditional that on the night of your dress rehearsal, the house is packed with like industry people that are cheering and supporting, and really, it's your dress rehearsal. It's like the night before you start previews and like your journey on Broadway. And we were all gathered. The Nederlander is notoriously like so small, and the only space where we could fit the whole cast for like a little huddle was outside, literally outside in an alleyway. So we all like made our way outside, and I just remember our director Jeff Calhoun, our choreographer Chris Catelli, just saying how special this was, not only for them, but like for us. And that like we're gonna look back on this and like, like when people talk about the good old days, like he's like, you're living the good old days right now. And like they were so right. And it's so hard to take in that kind of message when you're living it. And you're like, and I just remember trying to remember everything about that moment, and just looking around and just being really present and being like, wow, I'm like backstage at a Broadway theater. I'm about to make my Broadway debut, and like thinking about like, my ancestors. I'm like, I can't believe I've like, you know what I mean? So many generations. And I'm a Jewish person, and many of my ancestors like perished in the Holocaust, and like it's just massive to think about. Like, wow, you come from this lineage, and like here that brought you today, and you're making your Broadway debut. Your dreams are coming true, and like it was just, it's hard to describe, frankly. But it was really great, and I remember that talk that they gave us, like this was the good old days. And then I remember Jeff Calhoun, our director, going out on stage and being like, "Hi, welcome to the dress rehearsal, everybody. We're making like 20 Broadway debuts today." So, and everyone just erupted, and it was like, you felt, it's so validating. I mean, I can't even tell you how validating it is. It's you're just accepted, and it's like everything you ever dreamed of. I mean, it was a very, very special moment.
I mean, and you were originating a character, which not many people can say that young. Like, how old were you at the
I
time?
was 22, maybe 23. I think I turned 23 that year. So yeah, I was 22, very young. But for me, that aspect didn't even like, I wasn't even like, I'm not only making my Broadway debut, but I'm originating a role. It was like, I'm making my Broadway debut. I could be a swing. I don't care. Like I'm in this company. Um, yeah, that whole aspect of like creating a role like didn't quite hit me until later on. It was like, wow, that was really lucky that I got to do that, and the reason I think perhaps I took it for granted slightly was because it was so easy, in that whatever came naturally to me was what we used. That was the guy.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, who is this character? Let me like figure out who this guy is, and let me like figure out how to fit into his box. It was like that box was made out of me. So it was such a pleasure, and so not easy in that I didn't have to do work. Of course, there was so much crafting that went on, but easy for me that was like any choice I made was the right choice. You see what I mean? And so it was easy to take that for granted, especially being early in my career. That like it just felt like, oh my god, this is so fun. This is great. Like I love this. I think I'm good in the role and all this, whatever. So yeah, it was really just a magical time.
And you talked about not being a dancer earlier, but
Mhm.
you did do some dancing in Newsies.
Thank you, thank you.
So you can't like count yourself out of those dance numbers because most people who say they're not dancers like can't dance at all like me.
I really appreciate you saying that. And I worked really, really hard on that. When I say I'm not a dancer, let me tell you a quick story. So I had a college professor my sophomore year change my life, um, because he called me into his office after some auditions, and he was like, "Ben, you're a dancer. Like your spirit, you're a dancer. You just don't really have any like technical training and like don't know what to do with your body, but like I can see that your spirit is a dancer." And for me, that unlocked something that suddenly gave me permission to like own my movement. And I think that's sort of what got me ready to be in a show like Newsies, was because it's like, sure, I don't have the flexibility of like a ballerina who's been doing ballet since I was born, but I know how to tell a story with
Yeah.
movement, and I know how to like bring emotion to my movement, and I know how to like tell myself and feel like I'm a dancer even though I can't get these steps, or if I don't remember them, whatever. That spirit is there. And I really appreciate you saying that. And I even at Paper Mill, I danced even less. I did the big tap number always, um, and I worked really hard on that. We had some associate choreographers staying extra with me just so I can get the steps. You know what I mean?
Well, and you
And
stayed
then
extra, so that's like commitment.
yeah, right, yes. And then when we went to Broadway, I asked the choreographer if I could be in some more of Seize the Day, and especially in like I feel like it's the quintessential Newsy dance. It's like
Yeah.
this. They're like ding 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 ding, and I like learned it, and I was like, 3 really hard 8 counts that I like learned, and I was like, put me in, coach, I can do this. And he put me upstage right behind
Yes.
Alex Wong and every amazing dancer ever. And I'm like, that's fine, bury me, but at least I'm doing it. You know what I mean?
Yes. You're like,
So,
at least I'm not just like, at least I'm doing something and not like just like standing there and not like I
like
learned
running
it.
off to the sides. Yeah.
Yeah, like
That's
I
usually how
learned
it
it.
goes. Yeah. Yeah,
That's
totally.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
What was your favorite dance number to get to participate in?
Um it's so hard. I mean, that show is just full of amazing choreography, amazing. And it's amazing because not just the steps.
Yeah.
Frankly, the steps are irrelevant, but the story behind each step is what makes it such a pleasure to perform. A song like The World Will Know is so simple. There's not a pirouette, there are no high kicks. It's about marching in time and um
Beyonce.
but it's such an effective number. Figuring out how to get from point A to point B and showing these guys march through the street and taking off their bags and going on strike, and like I think it was such an effective number. So that was a pleasure to perform, because I could like sort of, it was an outlet for any anger or hurt that I was feeling in my personal life. And I'm not really an advocate of like bringing your personal life into the work. So much so, I think there is an element, of course, where we bring ourselves to our work. But again, when you're doing something 8 times a week and you've done it 200 times, like it can be depleting, and you can't just rely on how your day was that day and putting that into the show. If you had a terrible day and you put that into the show, then it's gonna be a little bit womp womp. You know what I
Or
mean?
nothing happened.
Yeah. So anyway, but that number was just great because I love, like, so great to just feel your feelings, and that was like an outlet for me to like really be like, the world will know. I also loved King of New York,
Oh,
because the tap dancing was something that I was always all right at, because tap dancing requires really very little technique. It's just about a weight balance. Once you get that weight balance, you're in the money. And then it's about musicality, I feel like.
yeah.
So for me, that was a really accessible dance for me. Whereas ballet, I was always looking like a stranger in ballet. But in tap, I was like, okay, I think I can find, like, if I have years of practice, I think I could be a good tapper. So that was a really fun number. And then of course Seize the Day, just because it was so triumphant.
Yeah, it gives
So
you chills every time.
yeah, totally. And like there were some nights like in the beginning, and even in the end of our run, where we would do Seize the Day, which is this just gigantic number. And we'd finish and we'd pose and the audience would like give us an ovation. And it was just like, it made you want to cry, because you're like, I'm just gonna be stuck in this pose for the next 45 seconds because y'all are like on your feet screaming because we like made y'all's day. And that's
It's
just a
a special
beautiful thing.
show. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's represented in the movie that's on in the film version that's on Disney Plus. So you've gone viral on YouTube. People have made edits of you singing a certain part of a song
Yes,
over and
yes.
over again.
Yes.
When did you first discover those videos, and what were your initial thoughts?
Well, so that's so funny. Yeah, that line really grabs people. I think it became popular from a video that Andrew Keenan Bolger made. He was my dressing roommate and good friend to this day. And we were working on some bits for the video, and that did happen. Like, that was true for me. That was a hard moment for me to sing in the show, and I would like practice it. I know it's like this one
Oh,
random thing, but it's like my voice also was
good.
not, it wasn't as developed yet. Like now I could sing That's the Thing, no problem. But like I was young, I was 22, and also I spent the whole show like screaming and yelling, so my voice was also often quite fatigued and like quite tense. So it was hard for me to navigate in that
Yeah.
moment, and we decided to make a bit out of that. And so we made this backstage video where like I was singing it constantly nonstop in the dressing room, and Andrew's putting on 3 pairs of headphones. And that video, those kind of behind the scenes videos really took off, and people loved that. And I'm so glad that Andrew made those, because we'll always have that, and it's such a fun memory. And yeah, I think that's where that stemmed from, was this little behind the scenes video. And this little bit that we made up, and it really caught fire, and people to this day are like saying the poor guy's head is spinning.
Yeah, now there's just videos of you riffing all over YouTube.
That's
It's
right.
just like Ben riffing. It's like
Yeah,
6 straight minutes of
sure,
I
sure.
think
I'll
there's
take
like
it.
an hour one too with like 100,000 views.
Oh my God,
I
crazy.
was I was like, I wonder what the reaction was.
Yeah, I mean, it's for me, it's like if it makes y'all happy, great. You know what I mean? Like I think being an actor, being an artist, frankly, is a job that is to serve, really. Um, you know, Ephraim Sykes, who is an
Oh
amazing
yeah, yeah.
um, performer, human being, he was in the original company, and he would lead us through some like pre-show, sort of like, I don't know what you call it, like a pump up, you know, like a,
Yeah,
and he would always remind us, just in the most beautiful ways, that like our gifts that we've been given as these as talents, you know, our gifts are not to keep but to share. And so for me, it's like, if you guys love the poor guy's head is spinning, I love the poor guy's head is spinning. You know, I made it with the intention of like making a bit and being funny and like being entertaining. And if y'all find it entertaining, I love it. Again, it's not about what I think about the work. You know what I mean? Like, that's something I've had to learn too, is like, it's so easy to get hung up on your own work and being like, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. But frankly, it doesn't matter really what I think. I'm not the one watching it.
performers
So
are toughest on themselves.
yes. And I get that. And I think there is a certain degree of being tough on yourself that is you do need. When you're tough on yourself, you challenge yourself to give your best work. When you're tough on yourself, you challenge yourself to just be the best that you can be. And I think that is essential, but it's a fine line from like beating yourself up to like being hard on yourself. And also, like, it's the issue of like, you know, my taste level is here. I have such high taste, and my ability might be here, or I might not be achieving, you know, the thing. You know, I don't know. So that's for me when I get frustrated, when I'm like, it's not good enough for my taste. But then I have to remind myself, I'm not making this for me. I'm making this for, frankly, for one person. If there's one person in that audience that feels like they can connect to this, that's who it's for. And um yeah, so that's how I sort of approach that.
And you might not agree with this 100% of the time, but I think that your voice is so consistent with every video you watch on YouTube of you singing. How do you like how do you work on vocal stamina and vocal control and keeping up with that like 8 times a week in a show?
um Practice. um I mean, yeah, practice, practice, practice. I'm almost obsessive about it. Anyone that was in Newsies with me knows that I would like do a full warm up with my voice. I mean, it's just crucial, not only just to get your instrument flexible, but in preserving it. You know, like the value in doing a cool down after a show is so great, because if you just sing this big show and then you just stop, you don't give your body like a chance to reset for the next day. So you can really compound that, and then one day you break, you know, and you get injured, and then it's like, oh, I got to take a week off because I'm injured.
Yeah.
And so warming up and cooling down and just working on your technique always. It's like going to the gym, you know. It's like any athlete. You can't just expect a gymnast to not be training every single day. If they don't train every single day and they go to do their backflips, like, they're going to break themselves for sure. So I see a voice teacher every week. Um, uh, I practice, I warm up, I'm almost obsessive about it, and you have to be. I think any craftsman will tell you the same thing. It's like, and some days are better than others. Like, some days I practice for an hour and I feel like, wow, my voice is trash. And other days I practice for like 5 minutes. I'm like, you know what, I'm good for today. I feel fine. So like, yeah, and yeah, being in voice lessons every week, I think was what helped me there. And
It, yeah. I was gonna say, even the times that you think that like during a performance you're off or something, people hardly notice those things
totally,
in
you're
the
right about that.
audience.
That's right. That's right. And there are times too when like I'm doing a YouTube video, like some of my most watched YouTube videos are performances that on the day I was like, not my best, interestingly enough. Or like, there's one performance in particular that people really love that was sort of like a one-off. Like I didn't really even have it memorized, which is a shame because like if there are any performers out there listening, just be off book. You just be off book. That's like the bare minimum kind of thing. And I'm saying that to myself too because I know sometimes it's a time crunch and you just can't learn it, or your nerves get the best of you and you go up in the middle of it. But yeah. So it just goes to show, again, you're not making this stuff for you. You're making it for others. And if they resonate with something that you felt was sort of subpar, you're gonna have to deal with that because they like it and it's for them. So the best
Yeah.
thing is be prepared, be prepared and practice and all that.
And I have to ask, you played Barry Mann on the Beautiful tour.
Yes.
So, and that's a real character that you're playing in that show. So how do you create a character for the stage that's like, you're basically telling their story, their biography? How do you go about that?
That's a great question. And what you do, you really approach it just like any other role that you would play, where you're looking at the script as the Bible and you're looking for the given circumstances and you're looking for what the character thinks about themselves. You're looking at what everyone else thinks about this character. And it's basically, for me, my process is like, you compile a little bit of data. You're like, okay, this guy goes through this journey. He starts here. What is he? Okay, he's a songwriter, but he's not famous yet. He's sort of like buying and selling in words. He's a hustler, just like me. I'm an actor. I get this opportunity and I show up to the thing and I either get it or I don't. It's kind of just like the songwriter. Okay, I know what that's like. All right. And let's see. Okay, fast forward 10 years, he gets to this big success. Like I was in Newsies, I kind of know what that's like. All right, cool. And so that's how I go about crafting that. And in terms of feeling like, I think they released us very early, like even in the audition process, it was like, it's not about doing an imitation. Like we're not trying to imitate these characters. And that was a real just weight off your shoulders. And even in rehearsal, it's like, we're not doing imitations. And so then really the script is the thing that's representing that real person. So you let the script do its job in that way. And so now no part of my job is to like evoke Barry Mann. That's the script's job. And I'm playing the script. And when I play the script, now you're watching Barry Mann through my eyes. And my eyes as a performer who is passionate, a performer who's hustling. And I think that was a great match in casting for that, because that's how I saw Barry Mann, as a hustler and also a bit of a worrier and, a bit of a hypochondriac and like, someone who just like thinks really quickly. And so those are all aspects that I also have. But I think the easiest thing was being released of there's no imitation needed, and just trusting that the script, that's a thing we have to do as actors. Sometimes we want to do the job of the script as well, and we want to do all this acting, when really we have to respect the script and let the script do its job. And sometimes we just need to be a little bit still and let the world be created around us, instead of feeling like we need to muster up the world to show the audience. Then we're doing some overacting. So for that particular project, it was letting the script be the representation of the real human being, and then just doing my job as an actor and gleaning what I needed to glean from the script, and then just acting the lines.
And I'm sure both are amazing because you have a job either way. But what, like, do you like tours or being on Broadway better? Because like for tours, you get to bring the audience to the US and like to a variety of people who can't travel to New York. But for Broadway, you're in one place. You're kind of in the center of theater. So like, I mean, there's pros and cons to both.
There are pros and cons. I think, I'm sure this answer will always be in flux for me, but I think I would prefer to be on Broadway because I'm home. So the hard thing about tour is that you're not home and you're not around your loved ones. You're around your company, and if you're lucky, you get a wonderful company that are also your friends as well as your coworkers. But again, that's if you're lucky, and that's not. I of course have been lucky in my career, but spending years on the road, it can be lonely, it can be challenging, it can be a little bit like, I don't know which town I'm in. I certainly experienced a little bit of that, of like, especially in a year two of a tour, when you're doing the sort of the smaller cities, you're Boise, you're East Lansing, Michigan, you're just your little smaller cities. It's a little bit like, where am I? But there's an aspect that I love of being someone from the Midwest who relied on these touring Broadway shows to get my fix. There is something about bringing Broadway to the suburbs, to middle America, that is so gratifying. That is just so magical. And oftentimes you're playing in these gigantic theaters and you feel like a rock star. And Broadway, these theaters are tiny.
Yep.
So there's a more intimate experience. It's really quite different. But for me, the main aspects is like the feeling of like having a job and then getting to go home is pretty sweet.
Pretty
When you're
nice.
on tour, it's a little bit like, okay, I'm taking a vacation from my whole life for a year. And that's amazing. And you end up making more money out there, and you just have zero bills to pay. You know what I mean? So you're just raking it in, and you're like a local celebrity. Every week you're a different
Yeah.
celebrity. And it's really, really fun. But it definitely feels like you're putting your life on pause and you're like going out on the road. Like you're being a rock star for a year and then you come back. Whereas Broadway, you're doing your job. You have a job, and you can do other projects. You can take readings. You can do other auditions. You can have a family life. You can do all kinds of stuff. So I think I would prefer that, but touring is really fun for sure.
I can imagine. And you get a free tour of the United States, basically.
Right,
As
right, right.
going on.
But
So,
that's interesting that you say that, because on paper you're like, okay, wow. Every time, when I started the Beautiful tour, I had already done the Spring Awakening tour, and I was like, I know what I'm gonna do differently this time around. I'm gonna do more sightseeing. I'm gonna I'm gonna go to these great cities and see all these amazing things. And then what happens is like you're working a full-time job when
yeah.
you get to that city. You arrive to the city, then you wake up at the butt crack of dawn the next morning to go on the local TV stations to promote the show, and then you're doing 8 shows a week, and then you're out of there. And so to find time to like go to a museum or go on a hike all of a sudden becomes like really extra, because you're just like, I'm so tired from my full-time job. So yes, on paper it's like I get this free tour of the US, but in practice it's a little bit
You got to figure out when.
it's not vacation. You don't get this free tour of the U.S. on vacation. You still have this full-time job, and some people are great at balancing that. And I think for some people, it's important for them to get out to the museums in each city and to get out to those hikes in each city, because it keeps you present. It keeps you from falling into the like sort of habit of like, I do the show, I sleep. I do the show, I sleep. Because sometimes that's what it feels like when you're, especially like on the holiday schedules, when you're doing 12 shows in a row. It's
Oh my,
hard.
I you all get so many props from me for doing that many shows a week. Like
I know,
what?
that's the other thing about being in quarantine right now. I mean, I guess last year I wasn't in was I in a show at this? No. Oh boy, my memory's failing
Oh,
me. But when you're in a show over the holidays, it's a very different experience than your typical holiday experience, because you're literally working. You're being the entertainment for all the people that are on vacation. So the holidays, when I think back in years past, like being in Newsies and in Beautiful and even Spring Awakening, I worked over Christmas and Thanksgiving. It's like you don't really get the, I sort of like that. It's fine. I'm like, I'm happy to be working on the holidays, making that time and a half, sure. But now that no one's working, it's interesting to be like, like the holidays as a civilian. Okay, cool.
yeah. You're like, what is happening? I don't have any. I need to do more.
You're like, I should be exhausted, but I'm not. I'm still exhausted. But
Exhausted from doing not enough. Is like
right,
from
right.
like not having enough to do. You don't have the adrenaline.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
So you've done so much in your career that like you've originated a role, you've gone on tours, you've gone on huge tours, you've performed at Tony's. Uh, what's on your current theater bucket list that you haven't done yet?
That's a good question. Well, I guess I'd like to do more television and film, which is a world I'm really a stranger to. I did a quick little spot on a TV show a few years ago, and it was quite challenging, I will tell you. Um, I was thinking like, oh, TV's easy. Like you get many takes. If you didn't get it right, you can just do it again. But I was really wrong when I showed up on the day. I mean, and I only had like a really small thing to do, but it was like you have to stand on the X. You cannot be off your mark or else you're going to ruin the shot. You have to like wait for many hours for the crew to set up the take, and then it's like 50 people have worked for 2 hours, and now
It's like
you
a
can't just waltz in here and screw it up. You better nail it on the first take. So it's very, very high pressure, and that job sort of scared me. I was like, I don't know if I'm cut out for TV. But now that I've had some time to ruminate on it, I'd like to take that challenge on, and so that's a goal of mine, and also maybe to do like another play or two. I had the opportunity to do a great play at Bucks County Playhouse 2 years ago called I Hate Hamlet.
Ooh.
Um, really fun show and fun experience, and fun to do a play. I mean, there's just like, it's just great. So those are sort of my goals, and now that I'm also working on some other aspects of my creative life, I've been doing some writing. So I would like to see the musical that I'm working on with my friend and collaborator Alex Wise um, mounted. I would like to see that. I'd like to write more musicals. I'd like to really sort of flesh out that part of my creative endeavor as well, my writing.
Ooh. I like that you want to do more plays too, because like plays are so, I feel like it takes the extra effort to get like an extra effort to get the audience like fully into a play versus a musical maybe for some audiences, because
Sure.
you have to capture the audience with your acting instead of the just like the music, which people come to musicals for.
Right, 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 right. And not only the music, but the dancing and the glitz and the glamour of the sets. Of course. Like plays a lot of time are on a stationary. It's takes place in one place. So.
So yeah. I feel like I was dreamcasting you when you were talking about TV and Zoe's playlist, Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist.
Oh, I would love to. That'd be a great one.
I feel like you'd be very good in that show.
Word. Okay, I'll keep my
Season
eye
2
out.
coming
Thanks.
soon.
Yes, excellent.
So, fingers crossed, maybe manifest that.
Yes, yes, yes.
So, you were talking about a script that you're working on. Can you say anything about that or tease it at all?
Um, I can tease it a little bit. It's a wonderful show that I'm really proud of that I've been writing. I've been working on for over a year now with Alex Wise, who's someone I grew up with, a great friend of mine, um, and a genius writer. If you know his work from Indoor Boys, and we've been collaborating on this little piece. It's a little chamber musical. It's a 3-person show, and it speaks to um, having agency over your creativity. We wanted to write a story about a pop star, a world famous pop star who was basically made in the fame machine. Someone who's got no say over their career. It's all just her agents and managers and producers being like, you're going to be this, you're going to be that. And sort of her journey in finding her voice to being like, you know what? No, I don't want to be what other people want me to be. I want to be my own thing. And sort of her finding her voice, and in the show, he and I play best friends and songwriters, and we get tasked with writing a song, our biggest song ever, for this world-renowned pop star. And it's about collaboration, it's about friendship, and it's about, of course, owning your artistry. And that's all I'll give you right now. And it's it's in one act. It's really tight and frickin' funny, and the music is pretty banging, and hopefully we'll see it on a stage sooner rather than later.
It sounds like something we need right now,
Yes. Yes. I
especially if
agree.
it's funny and has comedy in it. Then like we need something lighthearted,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
something like something with good talented people in it,
Yeah, totally. Yeah, 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 yeah. For
Like
sure.
like uh so how do you work? This industry is such a tough industry, and I feel like you've kind of covered this, but how do you really work on self-confidence in this industry?
Um, you surround yourself with a community. Community is so important. It's so easy to feel alone. And when you have a community of like-minded artists, you can get together and commiserate and support each other and remind each other of why you're there. Um, Over the years, for me, my community has been in different places. One in particular was an acting class that I was in for a few years in the 2000 probably 12 to 14, 16 even. And this was a class that was like full of Broadway performers who are at the top of their game. I mean, performers who we all know, um, who are, some have even gone on to be like quite famous. And we met once a week in like a little Ripley Greer studio, like a little like sort of like scrappy little studio, and we just like flexed our muscles. And to see people of such a high caliber get up in front of the class and be like, I have this audition, I have no idea what to do, I'm so scared I'm going to be made a fool of, and I'm like, oh my god, I feel like that every day of my life. And just to get that sense of community of like, I'm not alone in this feeling, like this is so hard. And we had a really supportive teacher, and when someone was really right for a part, it was like we were all like, this is your job. Like if they don't give it to you, that's on them, but like this is your job. And so that was really helpful. So that's one thing to keep up your self-esteem, is like get a community of like-minded people that will bolster you when you need bolstering, because the industry is thankless. It is ruthless. It is thankless. So, I mean, and what I mean by that is like you spend 10 hours of your life preparing like a pristine audition, and you go in and they want to hear only one scene. And you're like, but I prepared like 3 scenes. I gave you a beginning, middle, and an end, and now you only want the beginning? Sure, okay. Or like you hear stories of like people being in the waiting room and the casting director coming out, making a phone call, giving an offer to a client, to someone they just saw, calling their agent, being like, hey, we're going to offer this person. And then it's like, okay, next. And it's because they have to finish out the day, but you're like, well, I know I'm not getting this part. You know what I mean?
So like, why am I here?
Exactly. So it's just things like that that like really crush your soul. You're like, and you don't get paid to prepare your auditions like this. Like you're doing this for free until you get the job, and then you get paid. So it's a really tough gig. So yes, community is really important. Another little, I don't know what you call this. Like it's a little self-affirming tool or trick, is just turning fear into faith. Just when you find yourself feeling fear, for example, I might say, I'm afraid that if I go into this audition, I'm going to make such a fool out of myself. People are going to see that I'm so untalented that this is going to derail my career and I'll never get another audition again, because it's just like that. And so then I go, okay. What am I afraid of? I'm afraid of looking like a fool or looking like an imposter. Okay. And then get even more specific. It's like, okay, I'm afraid that I'm going to overdo my acting in this spot, and that it's going to lead me to look like a fool. And then what you do is you just take that statement, once you put that to paper, you get that out of your body so you can work with it. I think it's so important for us to feel our fears and get them out so that we can work with them. When you hold your fears in or pretend they don't exist or try not to think about them, you're really not letting yourself process. And so it's about letting it get to the surface. And then all you do is you just flip that statement upside down. And it's like, okay, I'm afraid I'm going to make a fool out of myself. Okay, I have faith that I'm not going to make a fool out of myself. And sure, it's a little fake it till you make it. It's a little bit like if you don't believe yourself at first, you just got to keep telling yourself that. And I found that to be really helpful too, where it's like, I'm afraid that I'm going to overact this moment and derail my audition. It's like, okay, I have faith that this is what this moment needs. And so I'm going to give myself permission to really go there. And so that's a little trick that I like to offer to people, because it's really helped me in a sort of a moment to moment way. But yeah, that sense of community, and also finding other ways of creative outlets. So in my past, when my only creative outlet has been auditioning, it's just miserable, because most of the time when you're auditioning, it's like, thank you very much, and you never hear from them again. Like, sure, sometimes you'll get a call back and you'll be like, I'm on top of the world, I might get a job today. Other times you even get the job and you're like, oh my god, it's just the best feeling in the world. It's like a high. But the other times you're mostly being told no, and if that's your only creative outlet, it's hard to just like have that be your only creative outlet and just be rejected all the time. So doing some writing and being creative, especially in this quarantine time, I think the one thing that is really successful in people that are doing okay is that they're being creative. And I think being creative means just making something. And that could be as simple as like making a meal for yourself, or writing a song, a shitty song, like write crappy lyrics, just get it out, or collaborating with someone. One of the most fulfilling creative things for me in this quarantine has been, I have a long-standing poker game with my friends. We play poker every week, for years now. And now in the quarantine, we've had to go digital, but we still play every week. And we decided to do a poker awards ceremony called the Pokies. And my roommate and I put together a full 2.5 hour show, complete with original songs, original content, games, a lip sync for your life, just it was to be a fly on the wall. It was truly so satisfying, to create just for the sake of creating and not having to get any feedback on it is like so amazing. It reminds me of this of what we were talking about earlier, when you're doing a show out of town and you're like, God, I want us to go to Broadway. Now you're creating so that you can go to Broadway. And then when you don't go to Broadway, it's devastating. So, and then similarly, when you're auditioning, I'm making this audition so that I can get the job. And then when I don't get the job, it's devastating. You're like, what did I make this for? So reframing your creative process of like, I'm doing this audition so that I can play a fully fledged human being, so that maybe someone behind the table might be affected by it, but not to get the job. When you take the focus from getting the job and putting it, I want to do a good job for myself, I want to feel like I made a fully fleshed character, that then all of a sudden you're getting some reward for your hard work and not putting it in other people's hands to give you permission.
Yep. I had someone on a couple months ago who was like, what I love about auditions is it's another chance to perform.
Yeah, totally. That's a great way to look at it. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so that takes some pressure off when you're like, okay, I'm doing what I love and performing for these people, even if no matter the answer.
That's right. Yeah, and there's something about that attitude of like, take it or leave it. I'm having fun. That's really, I'm like, I want that guy. When you come in being like, please, like, this is my best version of this thing for you so that you'll hire me. It's like, okay, sorry,
Yeah, it's like your chances can go. You maybe try too hard.
Totally.
So obviously we miss live theater. Virtual theater has been great during this time, but what are you most looking forward to when live theater is able to safely come back?
Man, the day is going to be a beautiful one. I look forward to getting in the same room as a group of strangers and all sitting there quietly, knowing that we've all agreed to use our imagination for the next 2.5 hours and to feel together. I miss feeling with people. I miss when a show is really impactful and it makes me cry. I miss hearing other people around me cry with me and like laugh with me and clap with me and scream and cheer with me. So I'm really looking forward to feeling that again. I guess that comes back to community. In reflecting during this quarantine, it's like we are a species of community. We're not a species of like being alone. It's just human beings are not meant to be alone.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, why theater is just like never going to go away. And it's such a huge part of our culture and who we are as a species. And I think it's exactly that. It's that to remind us that we're not alone, and that there are other people that are going through what we're going through and feel our pain, and that there's hope. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back into a dark room with people. I'm looking forward, living in New York City is the best because you could see something different every single night of your life and never like run out of things to see. It's whether you're seeing whether you're seeing a sketch show or you're seeing a stand-up or you're seeing an off-Broadway show. I feel like off-Broadway is for like the locals and Broadway is like for the tourists sometimes. Not, because not only the ticket prices are like affordable, like I could see an off-Broadway show every night and like not break the bank. And often like those shows are so intimate and they've been crafted without a commercial situation in mind. Yeah, like it's not like to bring in as many people as we can and to charge as much as we can. It's like to tell this story, as beautifully as we can. And so, I'm looking forward to having New York City have just the most eclectic array of, and of course, cabaret concerts. There's you can go all over town and see any number of cabaret concerts. And I'm looking forward to have some different things to pick from for sure.
Yes.
And to like go see a Broadway show, because it's nothing like seeing a Broadway show.
The overture is going to start playing, and it's just going to be like cute.
I watched The Prom last night, one of my favorite shows from last season.
Yeah.
I saw that show twice in the theater. Oh my God. And watching it on Netflix last night, I fully bald because I think that show is so great. And it reminded me of when I saw it in the theater and like what made it so special in the moment of the theater. And like, the theater is such a beautiful place because in the theater, you're free to feel anything that you want to feel, whether you're on stage or whether you're in the audience. That's what I love about it. You are free to be your full self and feel. And in life, sometimes it can feel like we're not allowed to do that.
Yep.
Um,
Hiding our emotions.
yeah, it might be unprofessional. It might make someone else upset. There's just a lot in our lives that in order to survive, and it makes sense, for survival, we sometimes like don't let ourselves fully realize those things. And then going to the theater and being able to just put your life on hold and being able to have permission to feel, and it doesn't get in the way of your real life. It's so cathartic.
It's funny you mentioned the prom and seeing the prom because I always say, I've been saying since I saw the prom in April 2019, that the ensemble in the prom is like matched in the best ensemble I've ever seen in a show with Newsies.
Totally, I agree. They slayed it. I mean, I love seeing musicals for that too, because like I'll be hard pressed to find an ensemble in a musical that isn't just killing it and working so hard. The ensemble are like truly the unsung heroes of the show. They are the backbone. Sometimes it can even be thankless. I mean, I don't know if you've seen this show, Harry Potter. Harry Potter is the best show I've ever seen.
I haven't yet.
Cursed Child. Ooh, I won the lottery. I paid $100 to see like both parts in one day. It was the best day of my life. I'm a big Harry Potter fan.
I love Harry Potter.
And the ensemble in that show is they have such a tough job because they are like making all the magic happen, but they're like in the dark. And it's hard to like hear the audience like ooh and ah and scream and clap, but you're not the face of it. You know what I mean? So the ensemble is a tough job because they're creating that magic, and even in the prom too, like like when they're filling out the background scenes and stuff like that, they're creating that magic, but it's like they don't get the reward, I guess, of like the applause, if that's
Right.
But I agree with you that prom ensemble was choice.
There needs to be a Tony Award for Best Ensemble.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. Yes.
Like ASAP. Because we need more appreciation for those people.
Yeah. There is an award. There's like an Actors Equity Award for Best Ensemble. So somebody does it, but yeah. I agree. I think it needs to be recognized by the Tony Awards for sure.
Yep. Because people aren't going to the general audience fully isn't going to start appreciating the ensemble until that happens.
Totally.
Which is sad. So to find out what you're up to and what's coming up in the future for you, where can people follow you on social media?
Good question, Becca. You can follow me on social media at Please and Thank You. That's PLZNFANKU. I'm on Twitter and Instagram, and I pretty much update when I have a gig, like whether I'm doing a digital concert or hopefully soon an in-person concert. And I also, in the beginning parts of quarantine, and then hopefully coming up soon, a little bit more, do like a little Sunday breakfast live show on my Instagram where I am at the piano and I sing a couple songs and I cook a little breakfast and just hang out with people in the comments and just visit with the Instagram community. And that's really fun. Instagram, it's cool to use it to really connect.
It's crazy. Social media.
It's a neat tool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the best. And you mentioned doing classes at the beginning, I think.
So yes, that's right. So I have a full schedule of private students. I teach voice, acting, and even some piano. And I also do group classes as well. And for information on that, I do have a website called fankedup.com, FANKED up.com. Again, my schedule is slightly full right now, but if anyone's looking to study privately, to take their voice to the next level or to work on song interpretation, style, acting through song, all of that, I do that privately. And you can book on my website and see what it's all about. You can also, I think, get in touch with me if you have any questions. And so, yeah, I'm happy to take on new students when I have the availability. Again, I feel, you know how I feel about the work we do. It's to share, and theater is passed down. And so I'm happy to be at the point in my life and career when I can start to pass some of those things down to the next generation and help shape the next generation, and offer advice and experience and helping people develop their talents.
I love that. And I'll put the link to your website down in the description of this.
Sweet. Thank you so much, Becca.
Of course. Well, thank you for joining me on this to talk with me. I'm
My
so happy to have
pleasure.
you on.
Yes, thank you so much. Thanks for reaching out. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for watching this episode of Backstage with Becca B. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Becca B Talks TV. Or for more exclusive content from this interview and more, you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Backstage with Becca B. Make sure to subscribe to my channel and like this video, or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, go ahead and give me a 5-star rating. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!